This is an example of the test tactic that I want you to use when you're answering your theory questions to make answering all questions much, much easier. First of all, read the question. Read it carefully. What should you do as you approach these roadworks? And then read the question again. Just make sure that you've read it correctly. Make sure that you haven't read what shouldn't you do as you approach these roadworks by mistake. So read the question carefully and then think about what you think the right answer might be. Don't look at the answers. Just think, what do I think the right answer is here? And then look at the 4 possible answers. Should you A, check your mirrors, B, select a higher gear, C, flash your headlights, or D, use your endurance brake? Now, from those 4 possible answers, get rid of 2 rubbish answers. So I've got rid of B, select a higher gear. You're not going to move into a higher gear as you're going up a hill towards roadworks. And C, get rid of flash your headlights. There is no reason to flash your headlights. So you're not going to do that. So now you're only left with 2 possible answers. A, check your mirrors, and D, use your endurance brake. Which is the safest thing? What should you be doing as you approach any hazard? So the answer here would be A, check your mirrors. You will check your mirrors before you slow down, before you speed up, before you change position in the road, before you change direction, and as you approach any hazard. So that's the tactic you should use for all your questions to make answering them much, much easier. Let's have a look at a few more questions and answers. What does it indicate if you see white lights on a vehicle at night? So remember that the lights at the back of the car will be red and the lights at the front of a car will be white. So the answer here would be D. It's facing towards you. What should you do when you park your vehicle on a 2-way road at night? What do you think you should do when you park on a 2-way road at night? Large vehicles are required by law to use parking lights when parked at night unless they're in a designated off-road parking area. It's generally much better to park off-road if you can, especially if you're going to be parked for a long time. But the answer here is going to be A, use the parking lights. Why do some buses have marker lights along their sides? So what do you think the answer would be here? Would it be to make them easier to overtake, to help the driver when reversing, to help any passengers getting on or off, or to make them easier to see at junctions? They'll have lights, buses will have lights at the front and the back of them to help traffic behind and traffic ahead of them, but the marker lights along their sides is going to make them easier to see at junctions. So the answer here would be D. You're driving a bus. Where should you be aware of the risk of grounding? So you need to be aware of the risk of grounding, for example, on a humpback bridge. Look ahead for advanced warning signs. If you decide to divert to avoid a hazard, make sure your new route doesn't also have a restriction that would make it harder for your vehicle to pass. So the answer here, where should you be aware of the risk of grounding, would be on a humpback bridge. You're driving along a motorway in thick fog at night. The reflective studs are red on your left and white on your right. Which lane are you in? So remember, the reflective studs between the lanes are white. So if there's white studs to the right of you and white studs to the left of you, you're in the middle lane. The studs next to the hard shoulder are red. So if the studs are red on your left and white on your right, you're going to be in the left-hand lane. What time gap should you leave when you're following a vehicle on a wet road? If you're following a vehicle on a dry road, it's going to be 2 seconds, a 2-second gap. If the road is wet, it will be 4 seconds. And if the road is icy, it's going to be 10 times the gap. 10 times 2 seconds will be 20 seconds. So if you're following a vehicle on a wet road, the answer is going to be at least 4 seconds. What's a crawler lane for? You'll find crawler lanes when you're on an uphill gradient, when you're driving uphill. And it's for slower moving traffic to move over into. So the answer here would be C, to enable slow moving traffic to move further over to the left on uphill gradients. When would weight transference be most likely to occur? Think about those words, weight transference, transferring weight. Would that be when you're reversing, when you're loading, when you're overtaking, or when you're cornering? So the answer here would be D, when you're cornering. When may vehicles over 7.5 tonnes maximum authorised mass use the right-hand lane of a motorway to overtake? Would it be A, when the motorway has 3 lanes, B, when other vehicles are turning right, C, when vehicles are stopped on the hard shoulder, or D, when the motorway has 2 lanes? So these large vehicles are not allowed to use the right-hand lane of a 3-lane motorway. So the only time they can use the right-hand lane is when the motorway has 2 lanes. What's a buffer lane? So a buffer lane is used when the winds begin to cause risk to high-sided vehicles. Don't use a buffer lane unless your vehicle has been blown off course, or if you need it to avoid an incident or collision. So a buffer lane, is it used A, a safety lane for vehicles blown off course? Is it B, a lane to park in until the wind drops? C, a lane for overtaking safely? Or D, the only lane to be used in high winds? So the answer here is going to be A, it's a safety lane for vehicles blown off course. At other times it would be used as a normal lane. So this question is about overtaking. Let's talk about overtaking first. On a road without street lighting, it's dangerous to overtake because there may be things ahead that you can't see, dips in the road or bends in the road. And you should never break the speed limit to overtake. If you're driving at the speed limit in the left-hand lane of a motorway and you see that lorries are merging from the slip road ahead, you should move over into the next lane if you can, if it's going to be safe to do that. After overtaking, you know when it's safe to move back to the left lane because you'll check your near side, your passenger side mirror. Before you start to overtake, you should look well ahead and make sure that you're not going to be trying to overtake on a hill, because if you're trying to overtake on a hill, it's going to take you a lot longer. So let's get back to the question, when shouldn't you overtake? Would that be A, when you would have to break the speed limit? B, when the speed limit has been reduced? C, when you're approaching motorway slip roads? Or D, when your view of the road ahead is clear? So the answer here is going to be A, You should not break the speed limit in order to overtake. So what are these brushes? Why are these brushes fitted to the vehicle's wheel arch? So this is spray suppression equipment. It stops so much spray being thrown up from water. So if the roads are wet, it stops so much spray being thrown up to other road users. You should check the equipment to make sure it's secure, to make sure it's not damaged before setting out on every journey. So these are fitted to the wheel arch to reduce spray on wet roads. You're driving in heavy rain. What should you do if your steering suddenly feels light? What do you think you should do? What would be the safe thing to do? When you're trying to answer questions, you're always thinking, what would be the safe option? Would it be to A, ease off the accelerator, B, increase your speed, C, brake very sharply, D, steer towards the centre line? So which two rubbish answers would you get rid of? And which two are you left with? And then which is the safest option? So the safest option here would be A, ease off the accelerator. You're driving on a motorway in heavy rain. What could cause your steering to become unresponsive? Would it be A, water reducing the tyre's grip on the road? B, tyres becoming hotter in the bad weather? C, braking gently and in good time? Or D, water entering the braking system? So would you get rid of B, tyres becoming hotter in the bad weather? Are the tyres going to become hotter in heavy rain? So we'll get rid of that one. And we'll get rid of C, braking gently and in good time. That is not going to cause your steering to become unresponsive. That's what you should be doing. So we're left with A and D. And the answer here is going to be A. Your steering could become unresponsive because of water reducing the tyre's grip on the roads. You're on a motorway approaching a working snow plough. Why should you stay behind it? So what do you think the answer is going to be here? Why would you stay behind, or why should you stay behind a working snow plough? What's the snow plough doing there? Would the answer be A, it's illegal to overtake snow ploughs? B, your speed could cause snow to drift behind? C, there may be deep snow ahead? Or D, snow ploughs are left-hand drive only? So let's get rid of D. Snow ploughs are left-hand drive only. That wouldn't mean you have to stay behind it. Let's get rid of B. Your speed could cause snow to drift behind. So you're left with A. It's illegal to overtake snow ploughs. And C. There may be deep snow ahead. If you're approaching a working snow plough, that snow plough is trying to push the snow out of the way to make it safe for you to drive, which means there may be deep snow ahead. So the answer here would be C.